Hi, in this video we're going to continue working on our shell shader. Before I continue, I just want to quickly subdivide this. Then we're going to add a displacement map, but I just want to subdivide it in the meanwhile, just so I get like smoother rendering. So just by going to attributes and adding on V-Ray subdivision and subdivision quality, you can come to the bottom where it says extra V-Ray attributes, and you'll have all these controls. I don't want to subdivide my UVs. And 256, the meanwhile I'm just going to use for like a very low number. After when we actually use displacement, we're going to bring this back up. But I just want to get some smooth results here. Re-render, see what the difference is. Just because that tessellation of the faces was really making it hard to see the effect. Okay, so this is looking a lot better. We can start to see some more detail here. With that said, one of the first things I want to do is that I want to use this mask that we were using for this pinkish layer. I can actually use this as a bump map on my coat layer, and that's going to give it a little bit more separation from the other two layers, from the SSS and the specular layer. So I just plug it into my bump, make sure I lower the value because the normal value tends to be way too high. So let's try something like 0.1. Re-render this region just to see what it looks like. We can even bring it up a tiny bit more just to see what's going on. Okay, so we're starting to get some separation. You can see it here, and it's looking a lot better. I've already created the necessary elements that we are going to see. So we have the diffuse. We can see here a little bit of that first specular layer diffuse, and this one, our coat. We have our reflection, which we're not getting much yet. We have no refraction, sample rate, which we're not really paying attention. We have our specular right here. Our lighting, just in case we need to like solve any noise issues, and our SSS, which is this where we're getting. So far so good. Let's go ahead and create another layer for this one. I'm just going to bring this guy down, bring another V-Ray material, and I'm going to call this guy shell coat 02. Plug it to the code material 2 and bring some files. You can even, if you want and you like keeping everything clean, you can always use, where is it, here. You can get rid of these place textures and use just one for all of them. I like to do that. There's really no difference unless you're planning to change any of the attributes here. Okay, so with this selected, we're going to bring our diffuse code 02, plug it into our diffuse, and we're also going to bring its corresponding mask. There we go. Plug it right away as the blend amount 2. Let's just name this really quickly. Shell code 02 file. And this is the same, but it's the mask. And let's just get another region and see just how that's working. We're going to start adding some speculars to those two top layers, but I just want to see on top how that's working. So we're starting to get two different layers, one layer from the first code, another layer from the second code. If we start adding some bump, let's bring this bump down to maybe 0.2. That should give us even more separation of the two layers so we can really see the effect going on. Okay, so we're starting to get those two separations. They're starting to look a lot nicer. But I want to start adding some more specular. So I'm going to start with our original SSS specular. We had completely killed it when we started. I want to bring this up a tiny bit, maybe like 0.75. and just have some like underlying specular. As you can notice, the more we start tweaking, the more we start adding, our render times start going slower. So eventually I'm just going to start pausing all our renders during the process just to save time. So we're having some underneath specular. It's very hard to see, but we've added some underneath specular. We can even bring this all the way to the top and maybe change this to 65. So we're going to have this very broad specular. I'm going to make my first layer maybe a little bit less visible, something like 35. So we have a combination of both this 0.8 and our 0.6 glossiness one on top of each other. So I'm starting to really like the way those two speculars combined work. You have like a very soft broad specular and then a finer specular on top. We have a good separation between our top layers. And I just want to add a tiny bit of specular to some of these top layers. To the middle layer, I'm going to bring these guys here. I'm going to duplicate this remap with the connection and use it for my middle one. Okay, this is getting, yeah, this starts getting kind of complicated, so let me make some space. Here, plug this guy to my reflection amount, bring the reflection to white, and adjust this to be maybe a little bit more reflective, but we're gonna adjust so it's not so mirror-like. So we just raise this graph a tiny bit, and we're gonna change his glossiness to something like 0.775, and this guy is gonna have just a tiny bit of reflection. So I'm gonna duplicate this one again, bring it here, plug it where it should go, change this to white, change my glossiness to maybe 0.82, but I'm actually going to lower this quite drastically to 0, this almost to 0. I just want to have like a very strong Fresnel effect, like it's only visible at extreme angles. Something like that. Let's take a look at this. Render. Okay, so we've added a lot of detail and realism just by adding those different speculars. We have the very soft SSS speculars. We have these tiny bumpy speculars on our top coat layers, and then we have our very defined speculars. Once we add displacement, this is going to change a lot. It's going to give it a lot more feeling, but I think this is good for now. I'm going to stop here, and on the next video we're going to start working on the body. Once we've worked on the body, we can move to the trail, then to the metal, and then at the end we'll add displacement to every single element and just adjust the render settings so we get like a decent render that we can show in our portfolios and things like that. And that should be it for our course. So we're going to continue on the next one working on our body.